How's everyone? Good. Give it up for the documentary. So, my name is Solio, and I'm your moderator for today. Please bear with me. I can barely see out of these glasses, but we'll make it work. As the video demonstrated, there's a lot to unpack about Soul Summit. So to help me do so, please welcome our panel. Soul Summit co-founder, DJ Sadiq L. Bellamy, come on up. Sundae Sermon Music Festival co-founder, DJ Stormin Norman, come on up. And we have the layout co-founders, Emily, Anadu, and Manushka Magloire. Come on up, give it up. Yeah, you're good. So I want to jump right into it. Everyone settled? Good? So, as we saw in the documentary, Soul Summit is such a beautiful community event. And so I want to start with each of you, and we can start with you. We'll start from the end with Manushka. Please share a brief story of one of your most memorable experiences at Soul Summit.
I mean, there's literally too many to count. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm from Queens. I moved to Brooklyn right after college. And Soul Summit is where everything happened. Me as the person and the community that I've been able to cultivate, absolutely the inception point was Soul Summit. Kavita, the researcher, is a homie. I've met Mr. Right Now, Mr. I Thought Was Forever. There's all sorts of, it's just life happened at Soul Summit. There's so many different markers of my maturity and that process of becoming a young woman, a young adult. All of that was the epicenter of that. That's where I made friends, I made homies, I might have made some enemies I didn't know about, but it literally, it just was about, it was an organism. It was a living, breathing thing that is such a fabric of who I am that I can't really pinpoint any one moment, except that all of it is encapsulated in part of who I am and why I currently now take up space the way I do with the layout that was started with Emily. So thank you, Sadiq and Tamu and everyone else involved.
How about you, Emily? Is there a moment or an amalgamation of moments?
I don't know how to make sure my mic was on, so I just was going to take hers. So I was saying to Sadiq as we were starting, so I'm not a native New Yorker, but the entire time that I've lived in New York, I've always lived in Fort Greene. And so I moved to Brooklyn in 2005, and so from 05 to 07, I was on Carlton. And for me, I remember that because I had gone to PWIs for college and for business school, that I like surrounding myself with Black people. And so for me, I didn't even know about Soul Summit. I just heard Soul Summit one day and ended up in the park. And then for 10 years, I actually lived on Washington Park. And so it's funny for me watching the documentary and hearing about Nelson George. Nelson George lived in the apartment directly under me. And so I very much saw the change from when Soul Summit was every single Sunday. And it was this magical moment where there were already Black people in Fort Greene, but you got all the Black people, I feel like, from all of New York in Fort Greene, and how magical that was. And so to Manushka's point, the reason the layout exists is because of Soul Summit, because for us in 2020 when it started, we just wanted to see Black people in the park again. And so we are very clear that we stand on the shoulders of greatness. And so I would say my memory of Soul Summit, just that it made me feel home.
I love it. You heard the bass. How about you, Stormin Norman?
Well,
what was the question?
What's really interesting is that I had not known about Soul Summit. A couple of my friends are real Brooklyn heads. They were like, yo, you gotta go to the Soul Summit thing. So Sundae Sermon actually didn't start until 2008, right? And And sort of the background to that was that I had moved into real estate development, et cetera, and all my stuff was packed up, floor to ceiling, 5, 6 deep, 13 by 13 cubes of records. And when I came in one day with my suit on, about a quarter of them had fallen, and all the boxes had split open. And so all of a sudden I'm like, oh, geez. And I have to start taking these records. And so as I'm taking them and I'm looking, I say, oh my God, I haven't played this in forever. I haven't played this forever. So you have to come from the standpoint that I haven't been playing. I took a siesta from playing music from about 2000. And so I started playing these records. So I said, you know what? I want to do something. And I remember I played for days, had the speakers in the window, just played for days. And I said, you know what? I want to have something on the weekends, preferably on a Sunday, and invite my friends, and we have a little party. Now we're all of age, we have children, you know, et cetera, so you don't want to get into the nightly grind, and et cetera. So one day my friend says, hey, you should go to this thing called Soul Summit in Brooklyn. So I said, sure. So we jump on the C train from Harlem, get out, we're coming up, we hear the whoom, 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 whoom. I was like, oh, this is popping, you know what I mean? And the energy of it, I was like, this is it. This is the thing I'm talking about. And what's really interesting is that as I stood there, I would hear, Norm, all friends from Harlem. And the thing about in Harlem was that there wasn't anything that was like what I saw, the monstrosity in front of me. I said, we need this in Harlem too. But there's so many of us people from Harlem that I hear, it's so crazy. And that was sort of the onset of why Sundae Sermon was started. And I was like, and then he was invited and he said, come on, Norm, let's go.
So Sadiq, you know, as a co-founder, what is one of your, I know you have a ton, but is there a memorable moment experience at Soul Summit that crystallizes it all for you?
Wow. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out on behalf of Soul Summit. Yes. Also want to shout out the co-founder, Taboo, in the corner there. Also, Ray Wilson, who's also been involved with Soul Summit from the very beginning. Thank you, Ray. Yeah, obviously we have thousands. We've had over 100 Soul Summit events over the last 20 years outdoors. So it's overwhelming to even begin to think. But there were moments, there were some down moments when Soul Summit was on the verge of not occurring initially. So those were memorable moments, if you will. Parks Department, Department of Transportation heads, the mayor's office, Community Board number 2, Fort Greene Conservancy, who is now a sponsor. All of these entities are major entities in New York City were against Soul Summit, including the police department. But the people rallied. There was, I think, the second year where they threatened not to give us a permit, and there were 5 calls made to the precinct, and they reneged our permit. And we were told, well, the police department, you know, they're reactive, they're not proactive. So we're going to go on the 5 calls. And we said, hey, so it's about quantity and not quality? And they said, yeah. So the next morning, they got 6,000 calls. So that was a moment for us, I think, a very, very special moment where the people took control over what they own, which is the park. You know, the park belongs to the people, which has been central to our expression. And we always carry ourselves as such, that the park belongs to the people and not the other way around. It doesn't belong to the Parks Department, the police, and all of these other entities. It actually belongs to the people.
I love that. And we're going to dive into that a little later with the Parks Department and so forth. But I want to take a step back. So in 2002, for the first Soul Summit, we were still grappling with the events of 2001, such as the tragedy of 9/11, the global war on terror, and specifically in New York City, increased racial profiling resulting from 9/11. So Sadiq, how did the social and political climate of 2002 influence the mission behind Soul Summit?
Wow. Well, you know that there's always been a suspicion and skepticism around black culture, black people in particular. So I think what Soul Summit had to offer overrode that concept to a large extent, especially in Brooklyn. So I think just musically and the diversity of our culture, and we understood that it's always important to have sovereignty over your culture and your artistic expression. And we were DJs, so you know we always controlled what we provided. So we brought that into the concept of the Soul Summit, you know, from outward or from in out. As DJs and producers, we have a history of controlling what we do. So Soul Summit was no exception.
How many of you have been to Sundae Sermon? Raise your hand, clap or something. Okay, cool. How many of you have been to the layout? Okay, all right. So Sundae Sermon, the layout, you know, as we heard, that, you know, Soul Summit has a legacy which has inspired these programs as well as many others. So I would like for, we can start with you, Manushka, as well. How has Soul Summit influenced the community events that you create with the layout?
Oh, absolutely. Like, the interesting part is Emily and I met over the pandemic in the group chat. It really does go down in the group chat.
Down in the DMs.
Listen. And that was like lifeline for us in lockdown, for a community of folks that, you know, we didn't know each other, but we formed these bonds so, you know, out of necessity. And Emily and I met in person the night, it was June 7th, June 6th? See, like I don't even remember. So yes, because the first event was a few days later. Yeah. We met for the first time at Fort Greene Park. It was a night that there was a particularly contentious standoff between NYPD and local residents. And by local residents, I don't mean white folks. I mean local NYCHA development folks, black people. That's the night that the NYPD paddy wagon got set ablaze. And that had a real mark on what we felt and thought about our neighborhood and community. Because the very next day, that was a Friday night, the very next day it was Saturday, and it looked like Pleasantville. You know, the dog park was open, you know, they were it's the erasure, right? It's the ability to look over, glaze over, walk over our pain, our expression, our physical bodies, you know, and so that affected us in a really deep way. And that's the formulation for the layout started at that point. This, you know, Emily was just like, nah, because she lived across from the park for so long, and being able to bear witness to that directly was like, nah, I got to do something. And she organized us in the chat, and that sort of climate is what bred the absolute steadfast focus of black visibility, black presence, black lives, black bodies matter, and then most especially in our open shared spaces. Like parks, you know, we are in an absolute urban environment, so any blade of grass you can touch and get to, it is an important thing for us. And most of the time when we think about these spaces, they're a necessity, and they're a necessity because that's where you're meant to feel safe. That's where you're meant to be able to go and be. And we just wanted to be able to gather black folks, and it wasn't in pain, it wasn't in protest, just come sit down, come dance, come talk, just come be. Whatever it is that you want to do, come use this park for that purpose. And, you know, this sort of service and gift and offering that we just did for our community and ourselves also, like to help soothe ourselves and provide a balm, has since grown into where we're at now. And it is because we both have seen the personal example of how much having music and community and culture for Black people is air. It is the thing that binds us. Having experienced Soul Summit and knowing how connectivity needs to happen in these spaces, that's what's continuing to propel us to keep pushing forward, because the same, barriers and roadblocks that Sadiq faced 20 years ago, they still manifest themselves in very much the same way. And I feel like I'm running on and on, so I'll just be quiet now.
And I'll just say really quickly, it's when you talk about the police and the Parks Department and those entities, it's interesting because as we were preparing for the first one, which was on June 7th, following, for us, like, the pandemic was already bad, but it really was similar to the idea of this political context. For us, it was following the murder of, George Floyd. And I remember that leading up to it, because we were just like, okay, we just, we literally had our first call about it on a Thursday night. By the next day at noon, we had a flyer, we had it going. But I remember calling, I forget if it was the 18th or the 81st precinct, but the precinct that deals with Fort Greene. I was like, just so you know, there's gonna be a few Black people in the park and I don't want any problems. And I remember that they called me back and they were like, well, as long as there's not more than 25 of you guys, it should be fine. I was like, hold up, screw. I was just being polite and because I don't want problems, but you can't stop us from being in the park. There are tons and tons of non-Black people and it seems to be fine. I was doing this as a courtesy. And I think to that point that it is our park. Mm-hmm. You can't police our bodies, you can't police us because we're in groups that you have decided are too big or whatever, but it is something about large groups of Black people that Fort Greene is terrified, and it is, as the neighborhood has changed, all of those moments, we have to work harder and harder to have them.
And Stormin Norman, is there anything in particular from Soul Summit you've learned that has influenced what you do with Sundae Sermon?
I think when I started, I was told that it was every week. And so, and I'll say this I'll say it like this. Sometimes as Black men, we have to make others feel comfortable, right? To get into spaces. And my thought process behind it was you know what? Let's add another part to what they're doing, all right? Even though it doesn't exclusively say family friendly, but I said, let's make it family friendly so the people at the parks can feel okay. Unfortunately, sometimes that's the way we have to move when we have something so special. And it wasn't so contrived, but my idea, my thought process was, let's name each one of these days. Let's call it Health and Wellness Day, which is generally in August. Mentor Day. Let's collaborate with GEMS, and we did something with Black Girls Rock, and we started doing things with Broadway shows. And they would come and give out tickets, and just to really just open it up. So when they're looking at us, they're not looking at, well, it's just a bunch of Black people. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, all of these things is what we do anyway. You know what I mean? We do it anyway. So it wasn't, we got to that our dates start getting cut very abruptly. We started out with 5, we went to 8 the following year, and then we did 5, 8, 8, 2008, and then 2012 we had 8, and then I remember I was on tour, and I was in Australia, and I get an email saying our whole season has been canceled.
Wow.
And I'm asking why. So, in a sense, you have to understand and who you're dealing with and play the game a little bit and et cetera, and that's sort of the trying to stay ahead of the guillotine. That's the right phrase.
And at the events, you know, the music is one of the main draws, of course. You guys mentioned hearing the music, that's what drew you in. So I want to start with you, Sadiq. How do you intentionally curate the music at Soul Summit to foster that sense of community while also satisfying an intergenerational audience?
Well, you know, we network, first of all. Soul Summit has always been that place where we invite DJs from all over the world, actually, of all genres, etc. So first and foremost, we're open like that. But mostly, again, we're DJs. We've been doing this 30 plus years. So we're in this like for real. It's not like, oh, okay, Soul Summit is Sunday, let me look for music. You know, we've been DJing for quite a while. We started in the parks before there was house music, before there was hip hop, et cetera. We all come out of that experience. So making music and producing music is something that, you know, we do constantly. But we do seek out specific artists according, you know, to what we're doing. For our 20th, I don't know if you know, we had a 20-year-old, Amir Brooks, actually DJ for the greater part of the entire day. So Soul Summit is open like that, but primarily we're producers of music. So, you know, we love what we do.
Excellent. And Stormin Norman, you mentioned the family-friendly aspect. So when you're putting together the music and the playlist, how do you do that in a way that appeals to multiple generations?
Well, you know what? When we our very first Sunday sermon, we had flyers out everywhere, and about 50 people showed up, and half of them were our children. Right? And so we actually curated from, I remember Kosi and Kumav were the original guys, and, you know, at that time, we're all in our 40s. And so we were in college at 86, 87, so 90s, so we played the music according to where we were coming from. So we loved house music, we loved hip hop, we loved underground. You know, we were at the Tunnel, we were at the Palladium, we were at Wild Pitch, we were at all the Limelight, all the major clubs. So that's where our influence came from, you know. And so we just played. We didn't even make it specifically, you know. Our children would dance to Michael Jackson, and then they'll be dancing to Work It to the Bone, you know. I mean, it just didn't matter at that point. I think it's just the vibe that you present that people will just gravitate to, and I tell you, just one funny thing. When we were moved to St. Nicholas Park, Morningside Park was a cut. You could hear it, but you didn't know where the music was coming from. You had to find where the steps were, or you could see people, because there were 2 levels to Morningside Park. And we got moved to 135th, where the train station is, and that's right on Front Street. You know, it's like you come out the train and boom, boom, boom. You know, it's like, oh, this is gonna change the whole energy of this thing. And I remember, packed people in the street all the way up, left and right. And there was a guy, so these projects were right nearby. And I remember we were finishing, there was like one last song or something we were playing. And this guy, now straight from the projects, he was like, "Yo, son, what is this thing you doing here, son? Yo, this shit is beautiful, son. I like, nobody fighting, nobody da. And I was like, you know what? If you bring it, they will come.
They will come, yes.
They will come, and they won't, and you will have converts just like that guy. When you doing it again? I gotta bring my girl out here. This is nice."
I love that story. And I want to ask you, Sadiq, because I also think about like the house music performers. There's not a whole lot of venues for them. They don't get a lot of mainstream support. So what response have you gotten from those house music artists about Soul Summit and how it's keeping the music alive?
It's been phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure commercial music has, eaten up, chewed up black culture to the umpteenth degree. So it's been a refreshing event for the community, for the region. Soul Summit has contributed, I feel, over the last 20 years to the resurgence of Brooklyn. They have all this data about people coming from Ibiza and Brooklyn is this or that, but the Soul Summits and the layovers and the Sundae Sermon have contributed to this bright light here in New York City. So they love it. They love the fact that it's free, it's fun, and it's a place where you can explore the art form in another way, which is kind of the concept of Soul Summit. We wanted to go outside of the four black walls, the club thing, which Stormin named a bunch of clubs. We all come out of that. But central to Soul Summit was creating like a safe space outdoors.
Love it. So
frankly.
before the event, Emily and I were talking about gentrification, and so I just want to give you guys a few stats about Fort Greene. So it's a historically black neighborhood which experienced a renaissance in the 80s, 90s with Spike Lee and so forth. But according to NYU, the black population in Community District 2 was 41.8% in 2000, and as of 2019, it was at 20.3%. So that's like a 20% decline in the amount of black people, while the white population has risen from 51 to 51%. So Emily and I were talking about gentrification and how it's not just a race thing, it's also a socio-economic thing. And so I was hoping you could sort of talk about that a little bit and how that sort of impacts the mission of the work and sort of reclaiming space.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the conversation we were having is that, people always talk about gentrification as a racial issue, and it's a socioeconomic issue that unfortunately falls along racial lines. But if you think, like, I am gentrification because I can afford to live there. There are things about me where I fit the profile. I think the difference is that, as I said earlier, when I came to Fort Greene, it's because I wanted to be around black people. I wanted to have that culture. I wanted all of those things that were so special about Fort Greene. And what I've witnessed, what we've seen, is that a lot of that history of all these things has been erased. And so it's funny, between Manushka and I, she's on the board of the Fort Greene Park Conservancy. I'm actually on CB2 now. And the conversations that I hear, whether it's like when we're thinking about, I'm on the committee that votes on liquor licenses, and it is so clear when there is black people that are trying to open a restaurant. Like, we've had situations where literally in the same building, in the same first floor space, where you have white owners wanting to open a restaurant versus, black men that are trying to open a comedy club, and the issues that are brought up about, when I'm like, it's literally, these black men want to close by 11, and these people are talking about having DJs till 2, but you're suggesting that somehow the comedy club is going to be disruptive to the neighborhood. And so for us, it's about just this idea that we are very clear our mission is about taking up space. And so even that first layout that we had was very much, I remember the weather was going to be like sunny and 75 degrees and everything was just going to be perfect. And we were very clear that we're going to be in the park, and either people are going to be uncomfortable and they're going to leave, but we're not going anywhere. And so I think for me, when I think about, again, that unfortunately what's happening is that there's not a respect of the people who were there first. And so whether it is the history of Fort Greene, the idea that on Washington Park there actually used to be benches along that street in the same way they are on the Myrtle side. And then unfortunately the white residents on Washington Park complained to the point that they had them removed. And so also it is not a coincidence that all of these things and all these arbitrary rules have happened that have fundamentally impacted these, these Black events. And so for us, it's just about trying to hold on to them, being very clear as people, pointing out when it feels subjective, when it feels like it's like, wow, you made up a rule that so nicely places us on the wrong side of it. And so for us, it really is, it's just being able to take up space and not feel uncomfortable in a neighborhood that fundamentally is what it is because of the Black creatives that helped make it. And that's not about me being racist, it's not about me, but it's just, for me, it's the idea of respecting and not acting like you are, Christopher Columbus, who's pretending he discovered something that wasn't trying to be discovered because it was clearly already discovered.
And Sadiq, you've been dealing with it for a long time. You mentioned the parks, and currently there's a petition circulating asking Mayor Adams and the NYC City Council to allocate 1% of the budget for NYC parks. And so that's what Mayor Adams promised to do. So far, he's not holding up his end of the bargain. So what do you think it will take for NYC's policymakers to take events like Soul Summit, Sundae Sermon, and the layout serious and to back it in a way that sustains it?
More events. Soul Summit is probably not the best example because of our size. They have to acknowledge Soul Summit at this point. So we do receive funding from aspects of City Council. We have been funded by the Mayor's office, et cetera, but this is very recent. But it will take, the continued advocacy, that you see on the stage, in my opinion. Gentrification, in terms of back to the gentrification piece, it can't stop Soul Summit. It hasn't in 20 years. One thing that we noticed that the park, Fort Greene Park, was segregated. No one wants to speak to that. I mean, that park was segregated, which is very interesting, and to think of a park in a common era in that way. Soul Summit, ran circles around that concept that there was a Black side and a white side. So we need more advocacy, I think. We need more presence at City Council, which it seems like we now have, at least in Brooklyn. The community boards, the sister is on the community board. Both of us now are on the Fort Greene Conservancy. So I think advocacy and working within and sort of taking over these agencies is one way.
I love that. I want to open it up to audience questions. Do we have any questions in the audience? I'm going to rely on Marsha because I can't see any hands. Anybody have a question?
Can I say just one more thing
yes,
about
go ahead,
the layout? So I don't have a question for myself. That would be weird. So the other thing I think about the layout for Manushka and I is that we always try to think about the idea of party with a purpose. And so we always joke that we're like, we wish people thought we were more than a day party. We do other things too. And so also just this idea of taking up space, we actually have 2 benches that we've dedicated in the park. So the Pan-African bench that's on the decal side, that is something we painted, that we maintain. We also have a bench that's dedicated to George Floyd that sits at the base of the hill. the first year that we did the layout in 2020, all the DJs, the photographers, the videographers, they all just did it for free. No one was getting paid. We yet to make any money on the layout. But as we started getting sponsors, because we were lucky enough that people actually proactively were coming to us, and so it's been very important to us that we do support the community. And so after paying DJs, paying videographers, we've also funded the community fridges in Fort Greene and Brooklyn. So we've gone on to, like, at this point now, we've probably sponsored them for like 3 to 4 months of continuous refilling. We partnered with Recess Art. So we've also just tried to make sure that it is not just about us and the joy in that moment, but it's about making sure that whether it's food insecurity, whether it is just the ability to be an artist, that we're trying to support those things as well.
The ecosystem, right? And to Sadiq's point about advocacy and how does that show up? It's not, yes, we can be the spooks who sat by the door. That is a great way. But it also starts with our community. It also starts with us showing up and plugging in. Like, joining community boards are very simple things. It takes some time. That there's a reason why the demographics of it look the way that they do. But that doesn't mean that you can't pop in and make your voice heard. I think, these systems are created to make us think that we don't have voice, that we don't have influence, that we can't push in the same manner that white folks do in order to push us out. We do have the ability to join forces in this way to take up the space both in the expression of our Black joy, but also in how it is that we create these spaces. And we've got to fight that good fight. We do. I didn't start this with Emily thinking, oh, I want to join the Conservancy of a park. That wasn't a bucket list item, right? So being able to see that there's ways to push forward, to be able to see that it's not just me as a Black person anymore, the sole person on that board, that there's other representation, and Sadiq is also there. That's big. 20 years ago, it did not look like that, right? And that park still is very much segregated. It is still very much a Black and a white park. And that is why we set up on the DeKalb side, at the top of the hill. The thing that you see as soon as you come in is a sea of beautiful Black folks, and that is on purpose. Feel uncomfortable. Do
Love
that.
It.
We're gonna stand in our spaces and live out our joy no matter what. I can sit on this soapbox for a minute, so go ahead.
Do we have questions in the audience? Is there anyone? Yes, right there. We'll take that question. Next, yeah.
Oh. Hello. First of all, this has been such a fascinating discussion, so thank you so much, and I'm really glad I walked all the way from Bed-Stuy for 50 minutes, worst idea of my life. But my question is, as someone that wasn't old enough to enjoy those early 2000s parties, you mentioned the tensions with policing at the time, in the early days of the Soul Summit. Were there any conflicts or tensions between the guests at the Soul Summit in different racial groups and things like that? And if so, how were they resolved?
Yeah, well, fortunately, it usually didn't go that far. The administration of Soul Summit primarily took on, that struggle with the varying agencies. But I am happy to report that they're all on board. At this point, as I mentioned earlier, Soul Summit has grown significantly to the point where, the mayor, as you probably saw, has had to come and acknowledge us on our 20th year anniversary. So there hasn't, it never. Honestly, it never reached the point where the police were, in the crowd and with the barricades. Fortunately, we never experienced that, to answer your question.
Did you want to add something, Emily? Or did you want to add something? No, Emily, sorry. Oh, okay. So we'll okay. Okay, all right. Is there another question? Yes. You can find them. I can't see them. Go.
Just a statement. I would like to say, my name is Donna, and I was speaking from the grew up in Fort Greene on Vanderbilt, and the Soul Summit has been beautiful And that was there. I said, we would get dressed, you knew what you wanted to wear, it was something that flowed and moved, because it was a ring shout. You know, it was a ring shout for black people to come and dance. And I did bring my daughter, now she's a little older, we bring the instruments, so people come, it's really beautiful. I would like to know how all the people who come out, how can we support, like put the table out, how can we become active? People may not know, you know, give out the flyers. They will put them in their bag, they'll look at it later, because it's come to parties, they're not reading anything. So they will help out, they will join committees, because it's important that we keep our culture, we're always fighting, we don't always fight, but we keep doing it and doing it so that things can sustain. It's beautiful, it's family oriented. Families come out to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. You know, people we haven't seen in a long time, people online saying, I gotta get to New York. Seriously, I gotta get to New York to the Soul Summit. So that's major and it's beautiful and we'll continue, you know, to be there. But
Thank you.
Once we keep playing some R&B, so we don't gotta keep the funky souls.
Thank you so much.
Some Dr. Love, okay?
Was there, I think there was another question. Yes, but right there.
Hi there. I'm sorry if this is a little long. While you all may appreciate this, I think DJ Stormin Norman is really going to get this. There's a British band called Faithless. They did a song back in the day called God is a DJ. And I came to that awareness of it when I was studying abroad in the UK in the late 90s. It resonated with me in a way that nothing else did because I was away from church and I needed to find church. And that song birthed a desire in me that I wouldn't have fulfilled until I moved back to the US, to New York, and lived in Fort Greene, Clinton Hill in 2000, and regularly attended Soul Summit. And I have attended all of your parties. I have traveled to Harlem for Sundae Sermon. I don't hate on Harlem, being a Brooklyn import. So I appreciate what you all do because that is church for me. That afternoon, that is church for me. That's where my soul is so nourished. So I thank you for that. And my question is for you, Sadiq. Sorry, I'm nervous. There is an event listed for the 19th, August 19th, the Plaza at the Shed. Is that really happening or? Because I'm trying to create something for some people that don't know but need to know what Soul Summit is about.
I'm looking at my co-founder there. He's saying, yes, he's in charge of promoting and signing off on events that, you know, I'm like, hey,
Okay,
we're
great.
DJing in London tomorrow. You know, get your plane ticket. Is that a yes, Taboo? Yeah? All right.
The
He says
Shed on
yes.
the 19th, is set? It's confirmed? Okay, thank you very much.
That's a yes.
All right.
Get ready
all
to
right.
dance.
Thank you.
And there was someone in the back, I think. Yes, all the way back there behind you. Yes. And then the last one over there.
I'd like to say good evening to everyone. My name is Ray Hands, and thank you. And I would just like to hear the very beginning, which I don't hear anymore from Soul Summit, about the James Davis story. I don't hear that. I was welcome in the park as a promoter, premier promoter. My name was mentioned. I got so many phone calls about when is the next date of Soul Summit, when Soul Summit didn't mind promoting me to get a crowd to come to Fort Greene Park. They didn't know Soul Summit. That basic dance party and that crowd came out of Ray Hand's loft that arrived at Fort Greene, not the other park, Greene and the Kyler Gore. But I was there. James Davis was walking in the street several times, smiling, asking me how was the party, at Fort Greene. They didn't know you, but however, that's no longer a part of the story. And you guys were waiting online to get in my party, but you were mentioned Nelson George, Spike Lee. Those are not underground club heads, house heads, all right? But I want to just let you know James Davis is no longer here with us, right? So I'm here to represent that energy that he gave to Soul Summit, to have it transferred to Fort Greene Park. The young lady in my office that was receiving the phone calls, because when you were announcing my name at Fort Greene Park, 95% of those people didn't know who Soul Summit was. You didn't really have a sign. They knew who Ray Hands was. So I'm here to represent that energy from that young lady that is no longer alive, that was answering the phone calls that I was getting at my office when you guys were having the next event. She's no longer here. James Davis is no longer here.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so much.
I want
for
to
your
just
comment.
represent that energy that
Thank you.
catapulted the party that we're all sitting here talking about or experiencing.
Thank
They
you.
should
Let me-
keep that.
Let me just
at
give
the
Sadiq a moment to
forefront.
respond. Thank you. You want to say anything, Sadiq or Stormin? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I can respond to the James Davis piece. Of course, there are many, many parties that influenced Soul Summit consciously and unconsciously. I'm sure Ray Hands did, as well as a innumerable amount of other parties. The Garage, the Loft, etc. Correct.
Sir, can we allow the panel just to respond? Can we? Can we allow Sadiq to respond? He's going to respond to you, and I just want to acknowledge. So, thank you for your comment.
I've been around it, and they cut out the real essence of it, so I'm going to walk out now. There's no response if you're not going to tell the truth at the beginning.
Okay, I did acknowledge you, but I will speak to the James Davis story. James Davis was very instrumental in terms of the formation of Soul Summit.
Sir, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At the very first Soul Summit event, for some of you who may be a little younger, and I think the sister alluded to the fact that she wasn't around, Soul Summit actually started at a park called Kyla Gore Park before it was moved to Fort Greene Park. And ironically, that day, James Davis came through the event. He happened to be driving by, and he came and blessed the event, if you will. We did run into trouble because the event outgrew itself the very first day. So we got calls from the mayor's office, as I indicated, parks, police, etc. And because James Davis happened to come to the very first Soul Summit event, he was able to, I guess, help Soul Summit move to Fort Greene Park. He was very instrumental in terms of suggesting that Fort Greene Park was a better fit for Soul Summit. So that's kind of the history. James Davis, unfortunately, was assassinated. I don't know if many of you know. He was a city councilman that was assassinated in the chamber, unfortunately. But if you look at any of our documentaries, we're always acknowledging the energy, the force, and the resource of Brother James Davis.
Maybe we should have just played music. But I think, to his point, that, like you said, there are conscious and unconscious influences. If you look at the layout Sundae Sermon, like no one's creating things in a vacuum. We're all inspired and influenced by so many things. And there are certain things that do rise to the top, get more visibility. But I do appreciate you acknowledging, the James Davis and sort of those influences as well, and Garage. I mean, it's all a mixture as long as we acknowledge the influences. So thank you for that.
And also, let me just add on, we all have our own personal influences. You know, I would be up here for hours. I'm sure Taboo has his own. We all, again, come out of what I call the outdoor park era. I have sisters who were older. They were in the discos before me. They would bring the music home. I started listening to it from a young age. So we all have a multitude of influences that probably preceded the Soul Summit concept.
So I'm afraid to take any more questions from the audience.
I was just going to say, maybe to
BK
break up the
is
energy.
serious here.
I was going to break up the energy a little bit and just talk so that if anyone has a really, y'all, we're here in love.
We got one last, and then we got to go one last.
Someone who's not going to knuck if they buck.
Who wants to say something? Oh, are you with Soul Summit? Yes. Okay.
Soul Summit 2022 in the house. Yes, the voice of Soul Summit. I like to keep myself very low key, but I have to say this: standing in that booth and looking out into the crowd, it's an amazing visual. Seeing all colors, types, you know, youth groups, et cetera, and I've seen Soul Summit grow and become more diverse. It's a safe space, you know, not just for people of color, for children. Lost children are always reunited with their parents. People lose phones, wallets, everything. You know, I see, you know, the gay people, you know, LGBTQ are there, trans. So, you know, Soul Summit has evolved into this amazing. My wife is French. We've been to Paris, and we've seen kids dancing to house music. And I tell them, oh, I'm with Soul Summit. They know of Soul Summit. You talk to people from the UK, they know Soul Summit. Once I was on the street, this Jamaican guy stopped me on the east side of Manhattan. Says, yo, my sister comes to Soul Summit. Yo, she booked her flight and this and that, this and that. So Soul Summit has gone beyond Brooklyn. It has gone beyond Fort Greene Park. And I hope it continues. You know, we had the young man play. I wasn't there for that first one, 20 years old. You know, the new generation of house heads are coming up. And, you know, we have to keep the legacy going. And, you know, thank you all for supporting. I always thank the crowd. You know, I always big up the DJs. I always big up our supporters. And it's never about me. It's about them, and it's about you. And, you know, that's all I got to say.
Thank you. So, Sadiq, I'm going to give you the last word before we close. If you want to say anything about, you know, what's up next with Soul Summit, just want to close us out.
What? Yeah, unfortunately, there is no after party.
I asked him, I was like, can we do an after party? And he was like, no, he was tired and all this stuff. So I tried, y'all.
He added that part. Did not say I was tired. But we will, yeah. You know, you can check all of our media outlets, Twitter, Facebook, etc., for what's next. We do intend to continuing, you know, our partnership. Hopefully, we can partner with the layout. We partner with Sundae Sermon all the time. The layout, sorry, layout. No, we want you to lay out. So we want to continue our partnerships, and mostly we want to thank you, you know, for blessing us in all the ways that you have over the 20-year period and staying with us and keeping the faith. So I thank you on behalf of Soul Summit, unless there's something else.
Well, I'm just going to say a few housekeeping things. Just want to thank our audience. Thank you guys for coming out. Our speakers, our videographer in the back, our photographer, Hakeem Mutlock, and that was Carrie in the back. And thank the Brooklyn Public Library Center for Brooklyn History team. Please visit, it's up there, bklynlibrary.org for more events on future, for more updates on future events. And at this time, we're going to take some dance-inspired portraits. I'm sorry, I can't see you.
I just have one more question.
Who has questions? Oh, we can't take all the questions because we have to be out of here by a certain time.
I just wanted to ask, I'm a long-standing Fort Greene, Clinton Hillish now resident. I saw this sister, I ran into you the first layout of the season. I came that morning and asked if you guys needed volunteers. I was like in my workout gear, and shout out to you. You were really like, yo, we just need the the community to come out and support us, not just, coming to party, but also like behind the scenes, being the spook at the door, so to speak, going to participate at the community board level, joining the conservancy group. And so I just wanted to ask the collective up on the stage today, like what can the community here in the room and just Fort Greene, Clinton Hill residents in general, support y'all so that we can make sure this stays?
Join the community board, right? You said that. Join the Fort Greene Conservancy. And then I just have to close this out, but come up and talk to them and they'll give you the things. They're approachable. But I just want to let you guys know we have to take our portraits. So we have dance-inspired portraits. Make your line here and we'll take a portrait and you'll get it after the event. And come up and say hi. All right? So end of the program. Thank you.